Welcome to my channel, or if you're new here, welcome back. I know I have a lot of new subscribers, so welcome. So today I wanted to do a story time for you guys about the time that I almost got stabbed by a fork when I was working at the psychiatric hospital as a nurse. First of all, I want to put a huge disclaimer on this video. One, I want to say that this video is going to be talking about triggering things like self-harm. So if that triggers you, please do not watch this. And two, I just want to say I was very hesitant to make this video or put this video up because I don't want to disrespect any patient. These patients that are in the psychiatric hospital are, especially on the unit where I'm going to be telling you guys the story, are very severely mentally ill, and it's very serious. It's not something to joke about. It's not me telling a story being like, haha, like this patient did that to me. Like, I am not trying to put any disrespect to these patients or their family because they struggle enough, and I would never want to do that. I will be changing the name of the patient and also changing certain details of the story just to respect their privacy. So let's get on to the story. If you guys don't know, if you haven't seen my previous video about my time working at the psychiatric hospital as a nurse, I did work at a psychiatric hospital when I first graduated. It was my first nursing job for about 6 months. So those 6 months, they were not good for me. I was very emotionally drained. I feel like I burnt out very easily from nursing. I feel the effects still from that job, even though I'm no longer in that job or in mental health anymore. I feel like it just was not a good fit for me, but I did learn a lot and I did gain a lot of knowledge and experience. I wanted to tell you guys some background story about the psychiatric hospital and how it was ran for you to kind of understand this story more. So there were different units as a regular hospital. So for example, a regular hospital would have like an ICU, it would have a med-surg unit, it would have different units, right? Depending on the person's sickness or severity. Well, it's the same in the psychiatric hospital. They would have different units. So there was a very intense unit where all the high level intensity people would go, or the most severely ill. And then there was kind of like two like medium floors. These patients were still very sick, but they probably weren't violent most of the time. And then we also had like an adolescent and child unit, so people 18 and under. When we got to work, we were usually assigned a floor, and usually you would work on the same floor. So you would have like a main floor or a home floor that you would work on. But a lot of the times we were understaffed, so you would be floated to another unit or a floor, and you didn't really have much say in it because we were understaffed. So you kind of went where you were needed, which I did not like because I am a person who likes planning and I like to know what's going on. And I feel like in mental health, most of the time it's very unpredictable. And I think that's why I did not like the job very much. So this particular day, I went into work and I was told that I would be floated to the high intensity severe level. Now I was usually either on the children's unit, which I also didn't like, or my main home floor, which was just like a medium like severity level floor. I started freaking out. I was like, I cannot be on this floor. Like, I'm not cut out for this. I don't know how to handle these people or these patients. And they're like, too bad, like we're short staffed, so you have to. You guys, I was terrified. This floor was known for very, very violent patients. Again, not saying it's their fault or anything like that. On each floor, there would usually be 2 nurses and 1 mental health worker. The nurses would be like the team lead. They would be, you know, kind of leading everyone on the unit. And then there'd also be a med nurse as well who would specifically hand out medication. And then there was a mental health worker who would go around and check patients every 15 minutes. So they would check where they were and how they were acting. They would go around every 15 minutes and check off like, oh, this patient's in their room sleeping, this patient is in the cafeteria kind of acting like annoyed, this patient is in the arts and craft room being calm, kind of like that type of thing. Every 15 minutes I would be getting up, I would be going to each room. You go to each patient room, or you try to find the patient wherever they are and check, which is very tiring. We would have about 25 patients on the floor, if not more or less. So once 15 minutes was up, you would be doing it again. I go and I'm doing my checks. Now I worked second shift, so it was late at night, and I remember it was like the last few shifts or the last few hours of my shift, and I was getting super tired at that point. And so I go, I check, like Susie's in that room listening to the radio, Tommy's in the cafeteria eating, I don't know what other name. Piglet was somewhere rolling around on the floor. I don't know. I got to one of the rooms and I see this girl, we'll call her Molly. I don't even remember her real name and I would never say it anyway. Oh yeah, guys, by the way, I have a blanket. We'll call her Molly. She is sitting on her bed and she's facing away from me and she's doing something and I don't know what. And I start getting really afraid. I go into the room and I'm like, hey Molly, like what are you doing? And she doesn't turn around. She just keeps doing what she's doing. And so I get closer and I turn like the corner of her bed and she's sitting there, again, trigger warning, but she's sitting there with a fork, self-harming her arm. And I start freaking out because I'm like, what do I do? Like your adrenaline starts rushing and I start freaking out. I'm like, oh my God. So the first thing that you should always do in a situation like this is try to de-escalate it without having to get like physical or violent. So I'm like, hey Molly, like you're not supposed to be doing that, right? And she just, it's like so haunting. She just kept doing it and she would just look up at me. Be like, Molly, you need to give me the fork. I'm like, where did you even get the fork? And she would just not respond, pretend I wasn't even there, and I knew she was hearing me. I'm kind of like going through the thoughts in my head, like, do I stop her? Like, do I take it away from her? But then she could probably like hit me or something, and I was always very concerned for my own safety. And when we got trained, like they did not really care about our safety. They would be like, you should do whatever it takes so the patient stops harming themselves. But for me, it's like, I'm sorry, but I don't get paid enough to like get punched in the face. I'm like, I could try to grab it from her, but it probably won't work. And this is all just going on in like a split second. And so I'm like, Molly, like you need to give me the fork. So I like put out my hand. I'm like, give me the fork. And I start getting like kind of like a mad voice at this point, trying to be nice to you, honey, but it's not working. And I didn't actually say that. I was thinking that would be weird. And so she looks up at me and she's like,
no.
And I'm like,
yes, you need to give me the fork. I'm like, you know you're not supposed to be doing this.
And she looks at me again and she's like,
I don't care. Like, I'm not giving you the fork.
And so I step, which was probably a bad idea. Like, I don't know. I probably handled the situation very wrong. But I go to take the fork from her and she raises her fork and in like a stabbing motion at me. And she's like,
I'm not giving you the fork. Like, you better get away from me.
And I start freaking out. I'm like,
oh my God, I'm literally gonna die here.
You guys, before I even started working there, the staff would tell me stories of what would happen to like other staff members. One girl had her like finger like chopped off or something there and she got her hair pulled out, and it's like all these stories just flood your head. That is not gonna be me today, honey. Not today. So I'm like,
Molly, like, calm down, like just calm down.
And she's starting to get like really mad and angry. And she starts like walking towards me with her fork in this position. So I decide not to get physical with her because I don't want to die that day. And I run out of the room and I'm like terrified to tell the other staff. Every time I was like a mental health worker, I would feel so guilty when things like this would happen, or if I would catch someone doing something they weren't supposed to. Not guilty like, oh, I just caught this person, like I feel guilty for telling on them. Not like that. I know it's for their best interest, but I would feel like I somehow caused it. And I don't know why, but I would. So I'm like, maybe I wasn't doing my checks good enough, or like, I don't even know how she got the fork. Everything there was highly monitored, especially in that unit. Yeah, so I run out of the room, like feeling really guilty. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is all my fault. I go running to like the head nurse and I'm like, Molly's in her room, like doing stuff with a fork that she's not supposed to be doing. The nurse starts getting super mad at me and she's like,
well, did you get the fork?
And I'm like, no, because I'm not gonna die. Like, I'm not gonna be stabbed in the eye for a stinking fork. And she's like kind of mad at me. She sprints into the room and she's like, call a code, like call a code. So if you guys don't know what a code is in a mental hospital, a code is basically where the patient is getting too violent to handle with just like the 3 staff members, and that we need backup. Everyone else on different units, like all the staff members, come and help contain the patient. So everyone came in to the room. They were trying to de-escalate her because, like I said, that's always the first step. We never want to just like go get medication and inject them with something if we don't have to. And this girl was just not having it. She started tackling the other nurses, and so they're like, yeah, we need medication for this girl. So we would usually give patients B52. That's what they call it. It's basically a shot of like Benadryl. I can't remember everything else, but it basically makes the patient sleepy so they can't really fight back or anything, and it calms them down. I know that's very controversial, I feel like, and if it's ever happened to you, it's like traumatic. Like, it's traumatic to have that done to you, obviously. That's why it's always our last step, but it's always, you know, we always have to think about the health and safety of not only the patient but also the staff. We inject her a shot and she ended up having to go to the hospital because she had a huge wound on her arm from what she was doing. And she came back from the hospital and ended up having to sleep in like isolation. So we had these isolation rooms that was basically just like a mattress. It had nothing else in it, so we could monitor them. It had a camera. She ended up staying there for the rest of the night. I don't know whatever happened to her, sadly, because I never went back to that unit. I was so traumatized. I was so traumatized from that experience, and honestly, I'm so traumatized from that job in general. The things I saw there were crazy, literally crazy. I'm not calling the patients crazy. It's just my experience was crazy. So yeah, I don't know. If you guys are interested, I have other stories of my time working there. If you guys are interested in hearing those stories, let me know. If you've ever worked in a mental hospital or if you've been a patient there, comment down below of your experience because I'm super curious. All right, guys, make sure you subscribe. If you guys are interested in mental health, or maybe you are looking to work at a mental hospital, please go watch my other video. I think it's called like The Truth About Working in a Mental Hospital or something. That video is super interesting. I go over what my day actually looked like my day-to-day, and what the nurses did and everything like that. So go check that out if you're interested in this subject or topic, and let me know if you want to hear any more stories. All right, guys, I will see. Oh my gosh, my voice just cracked. All right, guys, I will see you later, and yeah, remember, stay lovely. Bye, guys.